All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items at the beginning here before I hand things over to Nitya. We've just a couple good pieces of guidance on how to engage in Teams live event. Go ahead and type your questions into the chat box and upvote ones that are relevant to you for visibility, and we'll get those for you. A quick note on etiquette, please do take a minute to review the Microsoft Code of Conduct here. And on that note, I'll go ahead and pass things over to Nitya to introduce herself.
All right, hopefully you're all seeing my slides. So thank you all so very much for kind of coming to this talk. I'm super excited to be with you today. This is my first build online, of course. Before we get started, let me take a minute and ask you to just screenshot this, because if possible, I'd love for all of you to kind of like do a little bit of an exploration this week and try to build some of this yourself. So take a screenshot, otherwise we'll get going. So hi, and welcome to Sketchnoting 101, getting started with visual storytelling. So my name is Nitya Narasimhan, and before I kind of get started, I want to tell you just a little bit about me and why this is important to me and what the connections are between what I've done and why kind of I see visual storytelling as a big deal. So I've been in this industry for over 2 decades. I'm a PhD in computer engineering, and I'm a parent to a very curious 11-year-old. And I found that the commonality between those two roles is that I'm often trying to teach concepts by telling stories. I've also spent over 2 decades in research and development, and I worked in a whole bunch of fields: ubiquitous computing, mobile and web development, you name it. And in each and every one of these, there were complex ideas and problems to be solved. And I found that kind of one of the most valuable tools is the ability to kind of synthesize information and make connections. So that was step 2. Step 3 was when I joined Microsoft in the developer relations team. I'm a regional program manager for North America, and I work with diverse audiences. And that means startups, student developers, professional developers, IT pro, kids, career changers. And so we kind of got to this point where there's these 2 things happening, right? There are diverse audiences that I deal with, and there are complex ideas that I want to kind of communicate. And this is where I think visual storytelling really makes sense. So today's agenda is very simple. I want to talk to you about what visual storytelling is and why you should care. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Sketchnoting 101, a speed review of some of the tools and tips and tricks you can do to get started on your sketchnoting journey. And then at the end, I'm going to put that challenge up again and share with you one of my instances of my own sketchnote for one of those challenges, so we can kind of dig into it a little bit. But before I get started, I'm going to give you a minute to go grab a pen and paper. You may not be able to get any sketchnoting done during this 30-minute session, but I do want you to doodle as you go along. When you see an idea, kind of try to play with it a little bit, and it'll make a huge difference. So go get a pen and paper. If you have color pencils, that'd be even great. But I also want to say 2 things. Whenever I talk about anything in the realm of visual storytelling, people are like, oh, I don't know how to draw. Here's the deal. You don't need to be an artist. It's not about art. It's about your perspective. You always have something unique to say that you can share with other people. And this is why everybody needs to get into sharing their stories visually. So let's first ask the question, what exactly is a sketchnote? So sketchnote, here's an example, and you see that on the screen. And in fact, there in the corner is a picture of me drawing this very sketchnote. This was at the Create Startup Tour in Toronto last year. And at a very high level, what a sketchnote is really visual note-taking. It's about rapidly capturing concepts or ideas, often in real time. So you've got to be fast, right? And still capture and synthesize information. But the gist of it is sketchnoting is about visual note-taking. So you're doing this with words and images. And the whole idea is when you write it down, that you create areas of visual interest that draw a person's attention to it. So here you can immediately get like failure is normal stands out, right? You try to clarify ideas by kind of laying out information in a way that makes sense and not overwhelming the user. And then at the core, just be authentic and have fun. So Mike Rohde is one of like the folks that a lot of us kind of gravitate towards when we first started down our sketchnoting journey. And he has this thing which he says, it's about ideas, not art. So it's really, you don't need to know how to draw. You need to know how to like write ideas down. But why should you sketchnote? Now that you know what a sketchnote is, what's the other motivation, right? So let's think about this. When people learn today, there are various ways. Different people learn in different ways. Turns out there are auditory learners, people who learn by listening. And in fact, most schools run on the assumption that you're an auditory learner. You're listening to a lecture, right? And then there is kinesthetic, where basically you're learning by doing. And this is the kind of like the workshops and tutorials, you walk through these steps. But 65% of people are visual learners. They learn by seeing. So one of the most powerful things about visual learning is it's inclusive. When you're building visual kind of imagery and ideas, you're not relying on a language. You're not relying on a cultural mean. You're trying to represent it in a way that the maximum number of people can understand and convey. And that's why it's powerful. The other side of visual learning is that 90% of recall is possible. So they had done an experiment where 2,500 people were given people were given 2,500 images to look at, and they were able to recall 90% of them accurately 3 days later. So visual vocabularies and imagery have higher recall. And if neither of those, do it because it's a skill that you could use for many reasons. Creativity revitalizes your brain, but having visual toolkits and visual sketch notes will give you visibility and connections in conferences just like Build. So I'm going to spend just a second to tell you the kind of like the continuum. Today we're only going to talk about sketchnoting, but that's not the end of the journey. Sketchnoting is really about capturing your ideas. But if you want to progress beyond that and skill up, think of the 200 level of visual toolkit as anthropomorphism. And that's where now you start thinking of portraying all these passive objects as characters with emotions. Denise Yu, whose site I've given there, is a great resource to look at in this context. But when you give these things you're talking about human traits, people connect to them emotionally and they can remember and kind of like gravitate towards it more. And then 300 level is where you think about visual metaphors. So I can tell you what was in there, I can compress and show it to you, I can make you connect with it, but do you actually understand it? Visual metaphors is really about saying, hey, if you understand a concept A, and I'm trying to teach you a concept B, if I can somehow frame B through the lens of A that you know about, I'll be able to transfer the learning better. And you should look at Maggie Appleton's site, illustrated.dev, for examples. So let's kind of like, you've got a sense, hopefully, of what it is that we want to talk about and why it matters. So I want to kind of jump into just a brief set of examples. But I want to motivate you first to start this journey. First thing, be fearless. Everyone is afraid that they'll make mistakes or it doesn't look pretty, no, imperfections are what makes sketchnotes unique because they're you. Second, be visible. Everything you do, share your work. When you share your work, you get feedback and you'll be surprised at how many people just absolutely love this and will give you good feedback about what you do. And third, practice, practice, practice. The only way you get better is by persistence. So I want to kind of show 3 examples just to motivate what you might be able to do to get practice in sketchnoting today. Example number 1, do visual reports. This was Grace Hopper, right? It's a conference with over 20,000 plus people, women in tech, at a conference. I wasn't even there, I was online watching the keynote. And so I sketchnoted and shared it. And Padmashri, who was doing the keynote, who I happen to know, was like, wow, this is amazing. And she shared it. And lo and behold, without even being there, I had a presence. And I was getting connected to by people who were like, how did you do that? And then they led into conversations of, oh, what do you work in? So it's a great way for you to have visibility and connection. Second, visual reviews. Even if it's not about talks, we're all social distancing, right? What other things could you do to practice? If you read a book, think about writing a visual book review. This is a great example. Donna Sarkar and Jeremiah Marble wrote a book on startups. And when I first saw it at Great Startups, I loved it so much, I literally sketchnoted on the flight home. And then I shared it, and you can see Donna basically amplified that. But what I take away from this is very simple. It was a book on startups. But when I actually sketchnoted it, I realized that the perspective that actually appealed to me was that it was about community. And that gave me a completely different way to remember and kind of connect to the information there. So visual reviews are a great way for you to write down your book review in a way that you'll remember what mattered to you and you'll be able to remember it later. Third, we are all upskilling and learning all the time. Sketchnotes are a great way for you to create visual study guides for yourself. This is an example from Ignite the Tour that happened in DC. I wanted to learn Power Platform. I knew there was a 70-minute workshop that was going on. And I was like, great, I'm just going to go sketchnote that thing because I'm not going to be able to do it. But if I sketchnote and remember what matters, I'll be able to go and do it by myself. So I did. And the thing I'll talk about this example is what it helps you do is really kind of train yourself to listen and learn. So once you put a focus, you're like, here, I'm going to sketchnote this because I want to build it. You start realizing what are the critical things you want to note down. If you don't have an objective, you're going to try to capture everything. Hopefully that gave you kind of like a sense of what those examples were. But now I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to go get a sheet of paper if you haven't, because over the next few slides, I'm hoping that as we walk through the speed review of all the various things you could do, that you will actually kind of like play along and try some of these yourself. So grab some sheets of paper and a pen. Color pencils or pens is a bonus. So before we begin, I'm going to give you another kind of chance to screenshot this, but I'll just tell you why I chose 3 things. So when you sketchnote, right, you're really trying to capture information and you're trying to skill yourself in 2 levels, 3 actually. One is you're trying to skill yourself in capturing things in real time fast. Second, you're trying to skill yourself in representing it in a way that makes the concept clear. And third, you're trying to skill yourself in then representing it in a way that your audience can actually consume, right? So these 3 are 3 different examples I picked up just as instances. I would love it if over the course of this week, play with one of these, do a sketch note, share it, tag it, and I would love to amplify it. But the 3 options are sketch a docs page. If you go to that page, I picked that because it has exactly 6 or 7 steps, very few steps, right? And what you're looking at here is a single page of information that you want to synthesize into a single sketch note. It's a finite bit of information, and you can see everything there is, no surprises. The second example is a learn tutorial. The difference between 1 and 2 is in second one, you're really looking at steps, right? So think about what you might want to do to kind of document a tutorial in a way that's actionable. The third example is a video. The difference between the video and the other 2 is in the other 2, you can actually look at everything and kind of figure out your constraints problem, right? Hey, I have to capture so much in one page. I need to leave this much space for each thing. With videos, you don't know what's coming. So all you know is it's a 5-minute video. How are you going to practice making sure you have enough space to represent everything? So for your challenge today, I want you to pick one of these and try and start sketchnoting just for the heck of it and share it either today or by within the end of this week. So option 1, when you try to do something, is sketchnoting. Sketchnoting is what we've been talking about. And I kind of animated this so you could look at what that involves. First thing you'll see is when I sketchnote something, I actually try to lay out what my big pictures are. And then I fill in all the details, right? I'll be like, oh, okay, I can see that there are 5 different points. I need to make containers for this. And then I'm going to kind of connect the dots, make a flow for how I want to walk through this information, fill it in, and then I start decorating it to make sure that things are visible, things are amplified, etc. So if you want to pick this option, what you're really going to do is have your sheet of paper and think of free-form capture of information on that sheet. Option number 2 is fun if you're going to a conference and you actually want to give your sketch note away, is to make a zine. Similar concepts, whatever you learn. The only difference is with a zine, let's say you only have 8 panels. So you have to somehow distill your information into those 8 panels. So this is an example of a zine that I built. And in fact, here it is. So I don't know if you can see it, but this is literally what you do. You'd sketchnote it on a sheet of paper, you'd cut it in the middle, fold it, create a nice little zine. And then you have something that not only captures your perspective, but that you can give away as a takeaway to the talks you do. So you can sketchnote your own talk. So take the track, docs, learn, or video, and then figure out, do you want to do a zine or do you want to do a sketchnote? Do you want to do free flow on a sheet of paper, or do you want to do a zine with 8 panels? If you're doing a zine, just mark your paper into 8 columns, like the way you see it here, and kind of we'll go from there. So now, hopefully you got the speed review of what sketchnoting is, why it matters, examples of sketchnoting, and then your personal kind of call to action for this week, right? So let's dive into a few tips and tricks. Now, there's no way I'm going to be able to tell you everything I need to tell you in 30 minutes, but my goal today is to make you feel interested enough that you will go out and explore on your own. So ready for the speed read? Let's do this. So your sketchnoting toolkit. Remember that little animated sketch note I showed you? This is the static version of it. So I'm putting down on the left side a few things, and these are standard things. Most of the stuff I learned from other sketchnoters. And these are kind of the standard things that they'll tell you, hey, here are the little tips and tricks or tools that you need in your tool belt in order for you to do sketchnoting. We're going to go through all of these one by one. But before I do, I just want you to see how they relate to this. Remember, fonts, layouts, navigation are really about how you're going to display things and make them clear. Quotes are probably what you're going to do to highlight something and bring it to life, the takeaway message, the thing that resonated with you. In this case, for example, find your voice resonated with me, right? Quotes, so we talked about quotes. People, at some point, you can actually get away with sketchnoting just with shapes. But when you graduate to people, you can start bringing emotion in, you can start making connections. And then color and other things will help you. So we'll go into this. We'll start first with fonts. So you got your sheet of paper and you've got your pencil ready, right? Oh, your pen ready. So fonts are your number one kind of tool because you're really talking about putting words and images on paper. So fonts provide two purposes. First, there is the font style, right? So using different styles. So the ones you see here are the kind of ones that I often see talked about in sketchnoting workshops. Just simple uppercase, lowercase, cursive. Write your characters with 2 lines each for each letter. Write it with 3 lines. Try to do a 3D effect with block lettering. Any one of these things, right, is a different style. But what they do is they bring visual interest to the page. So when you use the font style, you're really looking at, hey, do I want this to be loud and attract attention, or do I want this to look elegant and kind of provide the person a feeling of this is poetry right here? You don't know, right? So font styles help you do that. But font size is about providing a hierarchy of information. And it's, if you've ever done mobile and web development, you know this. Section headers, subsections, body, right? So font size, font style, playing with the two of them, you can get a lot of stuff done. So try it on your sheet of paper. Depending on which one you took as your example, just write the title of the document, pick a font. And while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you how you can upscale. So you can go out and go to Pinterest. Pinterest will be your friend. Find different kinds of fonts that you can play with. I also like going to Google Fonts. You can set a display font, look for a font type, and then try to mimic it, right? In fact, you'll even see what it looks like. If you can write it, you can mimic it, and then you can learn it, right? So hopefully at this time, you've written your title in some font. Just go with cursive or uppercase if that's the easiest one. Next, layouts. At this point, you really want to ask yourself, how much information do I have to capture on this sheet of paper? For the 3 things I showed you, you'll be able to look at it and be like, oh, I only have 6 pieces of things, 6 items to show, or it's a 5-minute video, how long can it be, right? But I would actually have you think about how you want to lay it out in a way that makes sense to the reader. So if it's a doc, right, and there are 5 different things that are being talked about that are concepts, you might go with the column thing, right? Each concept has its own column. If it's a tutorial, you might want a path. Hey, do 1, then 2, then do 3. I tend to always pick radial. I don't know why, but I think it's because it gives the most flexibility in terms of how I can go from starting like a talk that I don't know what the end is going to be and kind of work my way till I get to the middle, and that should be the punchline. But the simplest one I recommend for a beginner is a grid. Just draw a grid. Figure out how many pieces of information you want to put in there, draw a grid, and make sure that you fill each box with a little bit of information. That first box should have the title. Once you've done that, your next step is going to be navigation. You're able to use fonts to put the information in. You've got a structure now, but you still have to give people guidance on how they navigate that structure, right? And sometimes you'll find as you start sketchnoting that people will say stuff related to something you already written way after they said it, and you have to somehow make that connection. There are various ways in which you can create navigational cues. I tend to use arrows all the time. They're my favorite. It's the easiest way to go. Pathways are also nice. Like when you've got things, just loop them with light lines and kind of color code them or use kind of some symbolism to connect them. There are also various things you can look at, like the links I've put in there, where you can learn about connectors and different kinds of shapes you can use. But I live in the Hudson Valley, where we have a lot of hiking trails. I like the idea of trail markers. I also love maps. So I'm going to throw out something there. If you can, go check out the How to Make Hand-Drawn Maps book. Look at how people navigated things. Look at how they represented unfamiliar territory and allowed you to walk your way through and build roads, right? You might get ideas from that too. Quotes. This is the easiest one. We already know why quotes are important. All I'll say is, to the extent possible, in every one of your sketch notes, find the takeaway message. Try not to have more than 1 or 2 and highlight that. This is from Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist. I really, really love this quote. Was take time to be boring, practice productive procrastination. And I wrote it like bold, right? Because I was like, man, I'll never forget this. And this is what you want. What is that one signature message, the one word that resonated with you, where you will always associate with that content? Quote it. Because chances are if you quoted it, others will too. It's like the highlight on a Kindle, right? If you quoted it, you will find yourself resonating with other people who see that equally valuable. So in your case, as you're sketchnoting, look through the content, figure out what's the phrase someone said in the video, or what's the one sentence or keyword that really stands out, and quote it. Icons. Icons, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Iconography is super easy to do. Learn and build your vocabulary for your domain. So initially, if you are in cloud computing, figure out what the keywords are, find relevant icons, and start practicing how to draw them. The faster you can draw them, the faster you can represent them, right? But there are two value propositions for icons. One, visual things always help people kind of consume information easier, so it's there. But the second is icons create a consistent vocabulary. So if I use a bulb for the notion of, hey, this is a tip, I can use it anywhere on the page, and after a period of time, people understand. They just look for the bulbs to figure out what the tips are, right? And here's a little hint. You want to practice icons? My biggest tip is to go to the Noun Project. It's one of my favorite sites. If you use any of those icons in any software, give it attribution and you can use it for free, or you can pay a price and you don't even have to give attribution. When you're actually trying to learn, you're just trying to copy icons. So there's nothing there, but I would still give attribution. However, what I love about it is that you'll see that the icons there reflect different people's perspectives. You'll come up with really interesting ways to represent words. So go play there, find out different icons for your domain, practice and draw them. Pick 2 to 3 keywords from the text you're looking at, draw some icons. Last but not least, there's just one more, people. I can draw people to save my life. But I found that it's very easy to do simple figures. And there are various things. We look at sketchnoting workshops, they'll come up with various ways to do it. I like just these two. Stick people. Pinterest is your friend. There are tons of boards with just various stick poses that you can very, very quickly replicate and keep. And they're super simple. Star people is something I learned from Denise's workshop recently, but star people gives it a little bit more texture, right? Again, very easy to do. But if neither of those is down your alley, that's fine. The simple kind of like a little bubble with a head on it for a person and a little crowd of people is more than enough to get you to convey the impression that you want. Like a person is saying this, or I'm talking to a group of people, and you can go from there. So the advice for you here is start with simple outlines, then try to do things which have faces. Once you've got there, then and only then do you want to graduate to showing emotion, where emotions can be a combination of both the gestures and the face. So in your sketch note, try to find a place where you could add a character. It could be in that final panel where you're trying to describe yourself. Draw yourself as a stick figure, add some emotion to yourself, and label it. Last but not least, colors. I'm not going to say much other than to say that black and white is perfectly fine. But when you add color, you can use it intentionally in one of two ways. Use color to separate things, right? When you start writing a lot of stuff, the black and white version can be overwhelming. By adding color as a separator, you suddenly start seeing islands of things that are relevant, right? So it's a great way to create separation. But it's also a great way to create connection. So when you've sketchnoted things all over and you realize the concept that the person talked about initially is connected to a concept they talked about at the end, but they're too far away for you to connect, use color to make the connection. And you'll be able to show the contextual linkage. So if all of this is interesting to you, there's tons of other tips and tricks, but I want to leave you with just resources. Snapshot this page. There are a ton more things that you could do, but everyone I know pretty much will recommend the first book, Sketchnoting with Mike Rohde. It's the place, there's a handbook and there's a workbook. So great place for you to get started just playing with different ideas. Creative lettering is something I've started looking at because every sketch note starts with your lettering. And if you can't be legible and you can't be creative, it's really hard. So it's a way to upskill there. The doodle revolution is really about how you can think differently, how visual thinking is a thing. Like how can you actually try to like not just put things down on paper, but kind of scope them out in a way that makes sense. Austin Kleon's books are amazing because they have nothing to do with sketchnoting per se, but they will tell you why creativity is important. And then the last stuff talked about before. Once you've done sketchnoting, if you want to skill up, Look for other people that you can derive inspiration from. Maggie Appleton for visual metaphors is amazing. Denise Yu does a ton of workshops where she goes through sketchnoting and anthropomorphism. Definitely check her out. So I have just a few minutes. So I'm going to basically kind of wrap up and do another call. If you could practice. So I'm going to leave this up for 2 seconds and I'm going to see if there are any questions. But what I would love for you to do is pick one of these, sketchnote it. I am at Nithya on Twitter. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to share something, DM me. This is something I absolutely love, and I want to make sure more people get to have fun playing with it. So pick a test target, sketchnote it, tag it with MS Build, sketch the docs, or tag me and share it. And I'll tell you why this is important. One, just sharing it is the first step to you getting started on this journey, right? Once you do it, you'll understand how people will respond positively to what you're doing. Second, because I've only given 3 choices, it'll be really interesting for you to go and look at what other people sketchnoted for the same topic you did. And you'll understand what I mean by saying we all have unique perspectives and you can learn from others. So hopefully sketchnote, you captured this and you will share some of your sketch notes with me. And I just have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to wrap up. So first of all, I just want to say thank you. I was exceedingly nervous about this talk because this is the first time I'm speaking at Bill. This is a topic I'm very passionate about, but I still consider myself very much an amateur. It's just persistence and practice. I'm not doing it with very kind of structured thinking, but now that's where I want to go. So if you're interested in this, definitely kind of ping me or kind of keep an eye on my Twitter. We do want to be doing more of these workshops or events to kind of help bring sketchnoters together. Second is, it is really important for me that I kind of learn from this and make this better. So if you have feedback on this talk, was it useful? Was it not? Would you like to know more resources on something? Was there something you were looking for that you didn't get? Do share it with me. My whole goal is to make this useful for everyone, and I will share the slides and any resources I can at the end of Build. And I'll leave you with, sorry, go ahead.
We just have a couple more minutes and we've got a bunch of questions that we're trying to get through, just a couple for you. You're just too much great content.
Okay.
The first one, if we've got a moment, Paul asks how it's different from mind maps.
So when you think about mind mapping is really about you've got a problem to solve and you're trying to like lay out information, and absolutely you should take mind mapping as an analogy for where you want to start. But mind mapping is kind of like a very engineering driven paradigm. Visual sketchnoting is for people who are just it's like doodling. Think like, what's the difference between doodling and mind mapping? One is just trying to put information down really quickly, get it like to be clear enough that you can do something with it. Mind mapping is starting to organize it, and you have tools and a lot of things. So with sketchnoting, you're really looking for the lowest common denominator. But yeah, if you're familiar with mind mapping, you could definitely use some of the techniques you've done here. There are also the other steps, right? How do you do visual metaphors? How do you do kind of like characters, etc., that you can build on? Sorry, Mel, was there another question?
No, you're good. Just for all of you folks who are engaged, I know we won't get to everything, but please go ahead and pivot to Twitter, and Nitya will be happy to field those for you. The other one that I'm seeing come up is around tooling. What do you use to sketchnote for programming from equipment standpoint?
Yes, so whoever asked the question, thank you, because that was literally why the last 2 slides were here. I literally, to this day, I love pen and ink. So I'm not even kidding. Look, there's an ink bottle right here. So I love paper, pen, and ink because there's something so visceral about writing in ink on a sheet of paper and kind of seeing that the words come to life. That said, and this is the example of how I sketchnoted one of those challenges, right? That said, once you've done that, the value to going digital, and here I actually have started using Procreate on an iPad, is that with the paper and pen, you can change your mistakes. You kind of morph them and adapt them. With Procreate, you can start playing with ideas. You can add layers, right? You can create colors. You can create cheat sheets. You can fix your mistakes. You can animate. So there's a lot of things you can do to move yourself up. But basic tooling for me is just white sheets of paper and ink pens. That's where I started. Then I started collecting color pencils and like markers. Now I've kind of moved towards digital. And in digital, I'm really looking to see how we can visualize information better, not replace paper, more or less complement it. Was there another question, Mel?
You are just inundated with questions, but unfortunately we are out of time and we're going to have to steal her away from you. Again, if we can get her contact slide up for you, we'll stick you on Twitter.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Feedback is useful. I need to make sure I can do this in under 30 minutes next time. Tag me on Twitter. My DMs are open. Any questions you had, super willing to answer them there. And absolutely, I'm also just nithya.narasimhan@microsoft.com. Would love to hear from you. I also hope at the end of build to share a whole bunch of resources, including a recording, so you'll have places for you to get started. And hope that was helpful. Please give me feedback. I'll be doing one more session on Thursday morning, New York time. So if you had questions, share them with me. I'll try to answer them on that chat.
Wonderful. Thank you all for attending. There is a link in chat to navigate back to the Build homepage. Enjoy the rest of Build.
Thank you so much.